Hi everyone, on the show this week a review of this book here, Tarosophy by Marcus Katz. Marcus Katz is clearly one of the titans of the tarot world. He's probably done more than anyone else to keep the tarot world together single-handedly over the past 30 years or so. He runs the Tarot Professionals Association. He's written apparently 50 books. You see his name appearing alongside Rachel Pollack, Mary Kay Greer, Barbara Moore. So it seems almost heretical to even review a Marcus Katz book because this is clearly something along the lines of a holy text. Nevertheless, I am running a series of reviews on my channel, and so I am going to review it. I'll start off by saying that I think Marcus Katz is one of the most intelligent and interesting and in some ways forward-looking writers on tarot that I've ever come across. And this book actually contains much more good stuff, many more inspirational ideas and many more pearls of wisdom than maybe any tarot book I've come across, maybe excluding the purely historical works like Paul Houston's work. On the other hand, I think it's a strange book. It's not always easy to read. It's formatted and printed and constructed in a way which drove me to distraction and obliged me to concentrate very hard just to keep track of where this book is going. Now, it's unconventional in many ways. It's divided up into 3 sections, and each of these sections is divided up into 3 parts. And each of these parts is divided up into a number of paragraphs. Now, the basic concept is that it's beginners, intermediate, and advanced, which is fine up to a point. And then within those 3 sections, you've got subsections and subsections. The formatting, the design of the book is unconventional, and it starts off, it strikes you at first as rather refreshing and modern and contemporary. But he does choose not to use certain conventions of book design and publishing, which are there kind of for the reader's peace of mind. For example, when things are pasted in from Golden Dawn writers, normally if you quoted a large chunk of text from another source, you would indent it, wouldn't you? And also it's conventional, isn't it, that you would use a smaller version of the same font. Not Marcus Katz in this book. Some of the longer quotes from Golden Dawn sources, for example, are in exactly the same font as the rest of the book. Some of them are in the same font but bolded. None of them are indented. And so it's not always entirely clear what's going on. I also think that the way the material is divided up, sections, parts, paragraphs, exercises, and the way it's numbered and the way it's sort of catalogued in a way is dizzyingly confusing in the end. It's an ambitious book. It's a sort of manifesto, I suppose. I have a feeling it's Katz's first published book after a long period of work and research and the assembling of materials. And so it has this broad sweep. It goes from beginners right through to advanced in one 450-page volume. And that's kind of okay, but the beginner section is really, I would say, highly simplified, and the advanced section is really highly advanced. So I'm not entirely sure who the audience for this book is. I was stretched on both levels. I found the early sections exasperating because I just disagreed with the way he had simplified tarot reading. And I found a lot of the material towards the end of the book just going into areas that I really didn't feel were my thing. So this book came out in, I think, 2014, and the edition I have here, it tells you about other Marcus Katz books. Already by sort of 2016 or so, he has published like 37 books. So I worked out that he'd published 36 or 37 books in 8 years. And as I say, I think he's now published 50. It feels like the material in this book has been assembled over quite a number of years. There are sections which use the language of the 80s, and I mean quite specifically the 80s. He talks about recording things to tape. And in the section where he talks about taping things, he refers to a meditation which was designed or written in 1988. So you get the feeling that there is material here from the 80s right up until the 2010s, assembled in this kind of treasure trove of ideas. That makes it a really interesting book, but it doesn't make it an easy read. I don't really think the book flows, and I don't really think it has an overarching theme, except for the theme of Tarosophy itself, which is a pretty big theme. I've read the book twice now with quite some attention, and on both occasions it was a sort of roller coaster. I alternated between feeling, this paragraph, this page is not speaking to me at all, and then I would turn the page and I would think, wow, that's really interesting, that's really useful, that's really brilliant. Okay, so what is it about Marcus Katz that makes him interesting and helpful and brilliant? It's this: he is interested in modern ideas, and in particular NLP, that's neuro-linguistic programming, and it's a sort of brain science, I suppose. I've come across it at one remove. I have a friend who is an NLP practitioner, and it is quite brilliant. It helps us to think better. It helps us to live our lives better. It's a completely unesoteric practice. It's not a new age thing. It's entirely, intellectually respectable. And Marcus Katz is an NLP practitioner, and he combines this with what he knows as a very experienced and a very knowledgeable tarotist. And that's really interesting. That makes him write, I think, more intelligently and more originally than almost anyone else in the field. Nevertheless, this vision of how tarot and NLP coexist, this very ancient and rather mysterious, and you might say rather vague and rather unscientific discipline of tarot, how is it going to coexist with this brand spanking new late 20th century vision of NLP? And I think maybe that is the heart of why this book is a little bit puzzling, because you do keep rocking backwards and forwards between an esoteric viewpoint and a very modern, very forward-looking, rather scientific viewpoint. And I'm sure the author would say that there is no contradiction between those two things, and I wish there wasn't. I'm always rather a selfish reader in that I'm a very, in that way, it's a very bad reader. I come to a book hoping it's going to be a certain book, and then of course no book is the book that you hope it's going to be, because it's the book that it wants to be. I think I was hoping that this book would be more about that very sweet spot between tarot and NLP. And when he is doing that thing, the book is really unmissable. Okay, so let's have a look under the hood, as it were. So here we go into the beginner section. Now, the beginner section starts with, he dives in full NLP mode, and I think he kind of wants to hypnotize you into thinking that tarot is very, very easy. He says here, section 2.8, I'm now going to teach you how to read tarot in 10 minutes. So the method he proposes is that you learn what the four suits mean. Sure, four elements: fire, water, earth and air. And then you learn what the numbers 1 to 10 mean in kind of Kabbalistic terms. Creation, first swirlings, first forming, expansion, contraction, balance, cycles, focus, foundation, completion. And then once you know that, you've learnt 40 cards just straight off. Now, I don't really think that's true. And he starts with an example of the two of batons. Well, that's clearly number 2 in the sequence of 1 to 10. And we're in the realm of ambition and so forth. And so that shows a person at the beginning of a process who is feeling ambitious. But it doesn't really correspond with Pamela Coleman-Smith's drawing, because apart from anything else, that drawing incorporates the traditional meaning of melancholy. So that is a drawing of Alexander the Great feeling melancholy as he contemplates the world which he has conquered. I'm being a bit picky here, but I don't think you can teach people to read tarot in 10 minutes. He also says that, You can read the court cards in 10 minutes. You just need to be clear about that there are 4 different kinds of people in the world. And try though I might, I have never been able to conceptualize the idea of humanity being divided up into 4 different kinds of people. Even 16 different kinds of people, I really can't wrap my mind around that. I think there's probably, 1,000 different kinds of people, or maybe 95, but not 4 and not 16. So that's a bit puzzling. It's also a bit puzzling to me that he wants to simplify tarot at the beginning by explaining it in Kabbalistic terms. You can think what you like about Kabbalah. I'm not into it myself, but it's clearly not a particularly simple thing. And, you start off with 78 tarot cards and then someone tells you, oh yeah, there's now there's 22 paths on the tree of life and you need to get to know those as well. I'm not quite sure whether you're making things easier on the beginner there. And similarly, when we get to the second section, he does the same thing with astrology. So, fair enough, we're now in the intermediate section, and so it's fair game. We dive into astrological correspondences, and it's very in-depth. So, as I say, I think the charm and the value of this book is not so much in the grand sweep of it. It's in the way every now and then you get something just dropped in, which may or may not be connected with the flow of the book. You get a page or an article or a paragraph where he just gives you an idea or gives you a visualization or gives you a technique. And some of these are really solid gold. But whether the book itself constitutes a thesis is another question. At the end of every section, there are long reading lists. So there's no doubting the extent of Marcus Katz's library. So it's a bit like being in Tarot University and having a professor. In a way, I think the book is clearly aimed at tarot professionals. It's not really aimed at beginners on any level at all. So if you're up and running, so if you already know quite a lot about tarot, I think this is a book which you might find interesting and inspiring on many levels. But as I say, it's not the smoothest read on the shelf. So that was Tarosophy by Marcus Katz. I'll be back next week with more ideas from the tarot world. Leave a comment in the section below and tell me if you liked it. Bye. My lover won me with a kiss. He loved me not. The fault was his. And when my love was in decline, he loved me. Was the fault then mine?